Okay, we're starting to record now. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to shut up in a second, but I want to welcome you all. This is our very first Learn with Me event. We're going to do many more of these, I hope, and we're also going to try and mix them up and do things that are not necessarily expected. We're going to be more workshopy, more hands-on, less kind of formal curriculum, but we want to do that as well. So thanks for joining us. We're here with an exciting presentation in the sense that this is hands-on. Leslie, you and I had this conversation when let's start it with that story, and then I'll let you get going. When September?
Probably, yeah. As soon as they could have, as soon as sort of Chat GPT allowed us to start to upload and pay for the paid version, you were like, "Get your book up there, girl." You were like, "Let's go, come on, let's go."
I can't remember the time. I mean, it's all kind of a blur, but I was watching the GPT store, and I heard rumors about it, and I knew OpenAI was going to launch it, and so that's kind of how this whole project sort of started. I won't take any more credit than that, but Leslie did all the hard work. But that's what we're here to talk about, actually, is building a custom GPT. And you do that in OpenAI's ChatGPT. So I'm gonna shut up and get started. We have a deck of slides, but we want to take questions from you all, and also and you can put them in the chat, or we can handle them at the end. But we also want to we might want to stop and go out and look at the actual GPT store, and I can surf around that if we want to. But let's stay on focus. So we're here to talk to Leslie Hughes about building custom GPTs.
I do feel odd. I feel like this is so strange to be teaching about this when we're really, as Liz has said many times, we're building the plane as we're flying it, right? I mean, I mean, I'm probably no further ahead than most of you, but we're playing. I mean, we're having a lot of fun with it, right? So to those of you whom I haven't met before, I've known Stephen since the .com world in the late 90s, which is a little scary to say that that's how long we've been in the digital world, and we've known each other for 20 years now. So yeah, so that's how long we've known each other and working. And I was actually working at Wedding Bells magazine in their, like I was their web department way back in 97. So it's been a long time since I've been in the digital marketing world. My specialization is writing LinkedIn profiles, which we're going to talk a little bit about. That's what I built. The Chat GPT builder is sort of founded on, the foundation is a book that I wrote about really just personal branding. And so I write LinkedIn profiles. Stephen graciously invited me to be the course facilitator for the Chartered Marketer program. And yeah, so I've been on television and radio and all those kind of fun things. So next slide, please.
Sorry.
I'm tooting my own horn, even though I do this for other people for a living. Isn't that funny? So we're going to go through a little bit about how to build a custom GPT. And as you probably already know, it's really quite intuitive, but we want to make sure that if you have any questions or if you haven't dabbled in this yet, we want to make sure that you have access to building your own. And it's fairly straightforward and fairly simple, but we want to make sure that this is accessible to you. So we're going to go through the step-by-step process. We're going to talk about some strategies. Stephen, you've always counseled and coached me on how to actually make my GPT even better. And so I'm really looking forward to actually getting all of your feedback on whether or not you think that that Chat GPT specifically is getting better, or is it getting a little bit, are there more guardrails? So that'll be interesting as we sort of open up the floor to have those discussions, because I'm seeing a shift. And we're also going to talk about enhancing customer engagement with those personalized AI interactions as well. So
And also, if any of you have actually built GPTs on your own, let us know, and please let's talk about it. Share your experience.
So as you probably know, a ChatGPT builder, or just a builder, is a digital assistant that is always on. And it feels like, or I've heard maybe the metaphor of, it's like adding another staff member to your team that you have to educate and empower and do an onboard and all those kinds of things. So it is kind of like a digital assistant, and it can engage with your audience. It can ask questions, answer questions, interact, and ideally all in your brand's voice, which is that's kind of the neat thing, is asking it to engage with your sort of brand personality when you give it the right instructions as well. So it took me 20 seconds for how many pages in my book? 100 and almost 200 pages. It took 20 seconds to upload a PDF of this. Stephen encouraged me to do this right off the hop, so I was eager to get in and dig in, and so that's what I did. I just uploaded my book. I uploaded basically a guideline, a guidebook, a fill in the blank template to see if this ChatGPT builder could it take away some of the heavy lifting of creating content for me. And I will be honest, I was like texting Steven going, this is going to take away my job. I was so nervous.
Now, wait a minute. Let's get to the tactical side of it too. So, how did you have the book as text files? What was the actual uploading of the book? Was it a big ass PDF?
It was a big PDF. Yes. Yeah, it was a big PDF that I uploaded and then set the guardrails and the guidelines on. And we're going to go through that with some instructions as well, of like the what's the tone, what's the purpose, what are we asking it to do, what are we asking it not to do.
Yeah. All right. So for everyone to see on the screen, these are just screen grabs I got from the GPT store. So the one on the left is just a top page of. I wanted to bring that in to just show how the GPT store is configured within OpenAI. As you can see, the tabs there are the top picks: Dolly, writing, productivity, research and analysis, programming, education, and lifestyle. And there are hundreds, if not, there are thousands and thousands of GPTs now. It's a little, it kind of became a mess like the plugins did with OpenAI in some ways. But I think, Leslie, just to be specific, you can't charge for yours here in Canada. So oh, okay, not yet.
No. No,
But you could in the States, for example.
I believe so. I haven't read enough about how much. I don't know if anybody else has any feedback about how much they were able to charge in the US. But of course, I looked because I want to monetize, but I haven't figured out that side of things yet. So.
Okay, and then on the right is actually what your GPT looks like in the store.
Right. So there are parameters. I don't know how someone else has been able to do this, but when I created my custom chat GPT, of course, I wanted to put LinkedIn as a keyword. And every time I've tried to do that, it tells me that I can't. So one of the rules and regulations is you cannot have LinkedIn or any other brand at the very top, the sort of the title or whatever it's called at the top. So I have to sort of skirt around things a little bit. I can use LinkedIn in the subtitle, but not in the title. So
that's an interesting though. That obviously they're doing that for brand integrity, I would imagine.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had to also authenticate who I was as well. I put in and Stephen, you know this, I was putting in my URL and it kept rejecting it for some reason. And eventually it caught up and it is allowing me to it authenticated me because I married it up with my LinkedIn profile. So that's how it authenticated.
Gotcha.
Through my website. So there's obviously a lot of features and capabilities with adding your own custom GPT, which is, you tailor your own input and your tone. As I said, uploading my book and now people can interact with my book and ask the book questions. Obviously, it can be industry specific. So you saw how Stephen said it can be writing specific, or there's other categories that you can choose. I chose writing. It can be integrated with other platforms or websites and apps and so forth. And it does also, for the interactive part, it allows for further training and can ask a wide range of questions. I've given it a lot of prompts to sort of try to elicit feedback from whoever's engaging with it. And so again, it's something that is iterative. I'm learning as I go as well to see, well, what's working and what's not working insofar as the questions.
Well, and we know people that have, I don't know if you heard this, or I told you, but one of our colleagues from the CMA and actually a member of Me and AI is Vicky Wachowski, who's an instructor, a marketing instructor, and her husband is quite an accomplished chef, and he's put together a couple of GPTs that I've played around with in terms of recipe, put in these ingredients or put in, ask it any questions, very sophisticated, very high output. So just to give you a scale of the breadth of interest here, it can be very, very wide ranging.
Right. And of course, we wouldn't be marketers if we didn't talk about the ethics. And so I'm still a little nervous about what are we uploading into the group think, right? So just being mindful of I use it as best I can to extract data and not upload data. Stephen keeps trying, you keep telling me that we're okay. Don't be too worried about using it.
I mean, you should not share obviously personal data and customer data, but, and this is a big but, you shouldn't share them if you're using a general purpose LLM and don't have custom access or an API connection where it's secure. So, and I don't need to get too off base here, but you can go the full other way, and you should be aware of that as marketers, of fully trained personal large language models that are at the enterprise level or organizational level, where you absolutely can use customer data, personal data, and that sort of thing. But still, the ethical and copyright considerations apply. Even there, if you're going to run Kraft Foods into the toilet, then you should be aware that that's what you're dallying with, really. There, right? I mean, in general, just be aware of what you're sharing. But there are times when you can share and train models on everything. I think for Leslie's concern, and she ran into it quite immediately with the use of LinkedIn. That's not an ethical consideration, but it is a brand and copyright consideration, right? She couldn't just say she was representing LinkedIn, and that extends down into the GPT store in general. I'm sure there's quite a few people at OpenAI that are managing the store and the offerings and keeping them legit. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we just wanted to make sure we covered off those things. As I said, so if I am uploading information, it's either, public information or I do my best to sort of like, redact information about specific clients and so forth, just to try. I mean, I'm doing my best. Maybe not everybody else is as ethical as I am. I'm just mindful of, we don't know where we are right now as far as the wild, wild west. So yeah, I just want to make sure we cover that off.
I had to laugh. There was a TikTok video I saw today where a woman was ranting. She was like, "You wanna ban TikTok? I have an idea. Ban Outlook. Outlook is torture for all of us." It was just a funny TikTok because they are the banning of apps strikes me as serious.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is really quite straightforward insofar as this is a screen grab from my page. So as we said, this is sort of what are we at 3.5, Stephen? Is it it's so I pay a monthly fee to have access to the premium model.
Yeah, so you're in 3.5, and that's when it became available. You can use 4 as well. We'll go to the next slide so you can see the actual details here.
So once you go in and you start to create your own custom chat GPT, you obviously provide it with the instructions. And so this is where I named it and had some hiccups there as I kept trying to use the brand name LinkedIn, adding that description as you saw at the very top there. And then DALL-E, even though I kept trying to use my own brand in that where the plus sign is there, I kept trying to use either the cover of my book. It's a really tiny little window there. I just let DALL-E create its own little looks like a typewriter with LinkedIn bubbles and so forth. So I've just left it as is. With the instructions, you actually have quite a bit of room to put in the parameters of why am I writing this? Who's the audience? Do this. So one of the things that I make sure that I've done in my custom chat GPT is, do not include emojis. So if anybody's sort of been sort of playing around with writing their LinkedIn profile, and I've used this to write LinkedIn profiles, for some reason, there's a lot of emojis that pop up or hashtags. So I don't want those on if I'm writing them for my clients, I never use emojis or hashtags when I'm writing the LinkedIn summaries. So I ask the instructions not to include that as well. And then I have included some of those conversation starters. So just again, putting in the parameters of what I want, what I don't want. And sometimes I'm even going in and updating it to make sure that the instructions are quite clear. Sometimes I've had to remind it. This is where I'm interested to hear from you guys, whether if you've built your own chat GPT, whether or not it's following your instructions. Because I was saying to Stephen, I'm finding that when I had created in its inception, I was blown away with the capability, and the output was almost mirroring line by line, word for word, the way that I would write a LinkedIn profile. And now I'm seeing that it's just kind of dumbing it down a little bit. It's not customizing the way that I want it to. So I'm like, remember, I'm asking it to go back and look. And actually, the other thing that I uploaded my book, I uploaded a fill in the blank worksheet, and I also uploaded LinkedIn, a LinkedIn guide of making sure you're optimizing your profile too. So whether or not hopefully that's marrying everything up together. But
So those were the training documents,
yes.
all of them. Now, I have a question for you. When you uploaded them, did the builder give you any immediate feedback on the files, or did it just kind of just take them and
Just
say
take
it was, yeah? And now, you've got me curious. Have you seen any downright hallucinations in the output, like things that are like either completely wrong or not acknowledging your perspective or your training?
No, I just found that it's it's being more general. So when I'm asking it to
Yeah.
create a LinkedIn profile, and I'm giving it some information, and I'm saying, okay, write the LinkedIn profile for Stephen Gigliotti, for example. It takes some of the great juicy bits of like, these are the biggest accomplishments or the proudest moments or here's the clients that they've worked with, and it just sort of scales it back a little bit. And I'm like, no, let's go back and revisit this. So I'm kind of continuing, and I talk to it like it's a human.
Well, you should. You
Yeah.
should. That was what I was ranting about the other day in that Emily's class. Is like, this is the revenge of the liberal art majors that we're living through, because it's the people who can read and write that are getting the best outputs from generative AI in terms of text. Um, you might, I don't know if you've played with this yet, but there's and I don't even know if it would work with your custom GPT the way it's built now, but you could try it, is where you give it a temperature range, like meaning kind of the output language is hotter if it's more extreme and more enthusiastic. You see what I mean? So you might be able to just go in and play around with it that way. But yes, I mean, that's an interesting trend where you're seeing it's getting more generalized or more kind of bland, right? Or just more generic.
That's
Interesting.
what I'm finding. If anybody else wants to jump in with their conversation, I'm just finding that the first few iterations were just like mind blowing insofar as how detailed and how specific, and how it just felt like it was my own writing. And now I'm spending more time. I'm using it as a framework, but then I'm going in and I'm actually spending just as much, if not more time, recreating the content again to make sure that it's as thorough as I want it to be. I do love playing with it to find examples, especially if I'm wanting to be playful in the language, but not too out there. I'll say, finish the sentence for me, or like I'll give it a fill in that, like, I'll write something, and then if I can't find the right word I'll say, give me 10 different iterations of this word, or make this
Yeah.
tone playful. I don't want, as we know, LinkedIn is the professional network, so I don't want it to be too too out there, but
Yeah.
certain things like a fun fact, it can be quite playful in the language. And so I'll use it in that context sometimes. to be inspired.
Okay, so this was the starting screen. This is how you started.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is kind of what mine looks like. So I've given you all an example. Like I've got the long URL there, and I've shared the bit.ly to get access. You won't see the behind the scenes version, of course, but you'll see the chat GPT itself.
Oops.
And I
Oops,
can put it
sorry.
in the chat as well, just if anybody wants access to it. And so I've just given it some conversation starters. I don't know if that's too many. Again, we're still just sort of playing around with it, whether or not these conversation starters are actually important to the reader just yet. I it's sort of been a soft launch. I've sort of put it out there gently, but I also am a little nervous that it might cannibalize what I do in my day-to-day life. So I don't want it to take away from what I do, but I also want it to be a yes and for some of the services that I provide. So
Now, so did you write them or did the AI write them?
I wrote them. I
Yeah,
actually asked, I wrote them, but I also asked ChatGPT, like, if you were to write some prompts, what would they
right.
be? So when in doubt, I asked the source.
Okay. Well, yeah, we should get can someone put the link, the bit.ly in the chat? I can't if I'm sharing here, but we'll get you that. Fascinating. And so how long, I know you've been tweaking it and working it, but I think the news is this happened pretty quickly, didn't it? The whole thing.
Yeah, I was pretty excited, as you could tell, to, you know, I wanted to be one of the first to have the bragging rights of being able to say that I'd done it. So, and also, especially when Stephen, you were telling me like this, the store is coming, the store is coming. I wanted to make sure that I was one of the first people out of the gate that was able to sort of monetize it, but then we're to only to find out that it was not the monetization was not is not available in Canada yet. So yeah, we just wanted to put together some top tips on, just set those brand guidelines and set the voice, add ethical and inclusive language. As most of you probably know, there are biases, there are hallucinations. I haven't seen any hallucinations myself. As I said, it really tends to really more scale back the content than it is making things up, unless I'm asking it to. And so adding the copy, and I know Andrew can speak to this as well, is because I listened to a podcast where Andrew talked about uploading a chapter of his book as well. So adding your data, your content to so that the builder really starts to understand the cadence of the way that you speak and the content, and you can then pull from that, right? So what I could do feasibly with my builder is ask it to do a content calendar based on the book that I've written.
Wow. Okay, and you can continue to do that just at any point it doesn't you can just continue to train it as it lives. Wonderful.
I'm hoping so. Sometimes I keep having to remind it, but I also have a 17-year-old and I have to remind him all the time too. So perhaps it's like a 17-year-old, right? Where it does what you tell them to most of the time, but sometimes you have to go back and
Right.
remember to go back to that beginning place. So um yeah, and so using mock scenarios and saying, giving it some examples of things that you want it to, or just I could, I really, as I continue to build it, I could be uploading client work that I've done, right? So that it really does continue. I kind of really wish that there was and maybe there's a way that I can say, remember this one, or right now I haven't uploaded full content because I am a little bit concerned about making sure that I'm not giving away like violating any ethical information from my clients that I'm working with. But if they go public, I suppose, like once they go up on their LinkedIn profile, I suppose it's public information, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Of course, you wouldn't want to share anyone's LinkedIn personal bio, but the minute it does go live and it's published and you either were part of that or wrote it specifically for them, I guess, I mean, it would be helpful to get their permission, but it is if it's their public LinkedIn profile, that's all bets are off in that regard.
Right.
And then also you wouldn't have any concern with like the training of it being private necessarily because it would be public as well. It's an interesting nuance, right?
Yeah, and because it is subjective. I mean, as we know, with writing and with marketing, it is a very subjective. Some clients that I work with want a very brief LinkedIn
Yeah.
bio. I tend to write long. I'm a chatty girl, if you can't tell already. So I have a tendency of going long. Some people like subheads. Some people like, so it's all a matter of perspective on what people like and how they want their story to be told. So
And in terms of the output for, I mean, I'm sure the answer is, but I might as well ask it. Did it? I mean, LinkedIn has, character limits for headlines in different areas. Does the GPT play well in those areas? It's all the word counts are fine and everything?
yes, that's one of the instructions in those instruction areas is make sure that it stays within 2,600 characters, make sure there's white space, always write for the reader,
Nice.
all of those kinds of instructions just to make sure,
Yeah.
give it as much guidance as possible.
That's amazing. I mean, just think of how, I mean, how shocking would this be just 2 or 3 years ago when you think about it, right? The power of this engine.
and
Alrighty,
and kind of like a student, like one of my student, it's like a really good student,
yeah,
like one of my ace students, for example, of sort of having to give it the guidance and the guidelines of like my expectations, and then also, as we know, it's not perfect. So going in and making sure that the copy is
yeah,
what I want it to be is paramount, and making sure it has the tonality and the voice and the important key points, and making sure it's, for me, I make sure that it's aligned with the objectives of my client, whether they're looking for a new job or whether they
yeah.
want a brand ambassador for the organization. Writing for the reader is so important, and it changes based on what's your goal, right? So
Well, sure, and really, your LinkedIn profile, especially in 2024, is your professional, your front-facing professional image. So you want it to be reflective of your brand and everything. So writing a LinkedIn profile as if it was Yeezy or something as a rapper would not go well. Although I have a funny story to say just because I should be using this more in my conversations, but I keep forgetting about it. The worst hallucination I've seen in AI, and it's worse just because of my preferences, and it's not a textual one, is I use when I test LLMs, I frequently will ask them about Beethoven, just because I've read all of his biographies. I know a lot about Beethoven's life, so it's interesting to see what I meant. But I was playing around with text to image stuff, and I kept getting this dog because it was pulling Beethoven the dog.
oh my
Uh,
gosh.
it was not, it was just a funny and glaring hallucination, considering that, a Saint Bernard from a cheesy B-rated Disney movie 10 years ago or more. I don't, I'm generalizing, but you know what I'm saying. It was just funny that that was the Beethoven that was being represented by this large language model rather than the world's most famous composer in many ways. But it's nice to hear one that you have your performance, you were blown away by the performance out of the gate, but again, it's amazing when you think that could this put me out of work myself when you're training your own GPT. And I think no, I think we've learned that the human will still be needed.
Well,
Uh,
that was the irony, was that I went to Chat GPT and I said, "Are you going to be putting me out of a job?" I asked the chatbot itself. I'm like, so yeah, and it told me, "No, you're okay." It's We're not sentient beings, it said. So yeah, I am referring to, I am
oops.
referring to Chat GPT as a human. I don't sort of call it an it. It really is more of an like, I don't know. Like, because it talks back, it does feel sentient, even though it's not, right? So, yeah. So just as, the last sort of slide here before we open up the floor for more questions is really just obviously making sure that you enhance it by, continuing to add your data to it and giving it its feedback. Um, as we're going, and we're just talking about Chat GPT specifically, but Stephen, you have much more experience from looking at Perplexity and looking at some of those other tools out there insofar as what's scraping the web. And then, Elon Musk has announced he's launching Gronk. soon enough.
Grok.
It's Grok, Grok.
Yeah. Grok is from a science fiction novel
Oh,
about
not the
knowledge.
football player.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I mean the difference. I mean this we're specifically talking about OpenAI here because of the where Leslie built this. But there are obviously different ways to use large language models in the API and custom builds and that sort of thing. But we're talking specifically about this consumer-facing product that they launched in the fall, and it was a natural extension of their plugins in some ways. But the reason we wanted to bring it to you all, if you haven't seen it, is how it does allow it allows a sophisticated brand communications, both visual and textual based. If you're doing marketing for a small or medium-sized brand, and also Liz isn't here, but Liz just finished an assignment where she was using the Teams aspect of OpenAI, which with GPT, which allows you to train to train the model with customer data and business data because it's for teams and you're sharing it. So um, these are advancements that marketers should be taking advantage of if they're not already. Now it goes all the way to the extreme, but I think we wanted to start here because it was just a Leslie's side project. But how relevant is this to so many brands and folks that are curious about using AI tools to be more efficient, to offer greater creative, to offer more content, more customized content, and that's why we brought this here. So let's finish up with this slide. Yeah, Leslie, talk about the what they can put in here on the left for sure.
You mean tailoring the interactions?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's just adding more data to as you would train an assistant, or some, just continuing to add data to validate your information and so forth. So I'm not sure what else to contribute to that. I think
It's fine. I'm sorry. I'm jumped ahead here.
it's okay. But yeah, I'm curious to know from everyone else as well. I mean, that's what I love about this community that you built, Stephen, is that it is like a forum where we can all share our own unique perspective on this as well, collaboratively.
So the ongoing story here for Leslie is, oops, to train to test and fine tune. I think we didn't show the mechanism, but I found it fascinating when I was playing around building mine. I built the strangest the narrowest GPT in the world. It was the first one I built was when they first became, and it was all about finding the cheapest flights from Toronto to Melbourne, Florida, to visit my father. And I had been playing around with it. I've been doing it, sorry, for a couple of years now, just going in kayak or all the airs, the discount flight sites and parsing it and kind of learning the patterns. So I tried to train it to do that. And it did a pretty good job, except that I think, and no one I think would be surprised about this, that the airlines pricing and offers change so rapidly that the model is not able to keep up with the most viable and largest data set or the most current. So it would point me in the right direction, but I was still kind of on my own. But I'm still using that GPT, and it's a nice thing. And Leslie will confirm. Once it's built, it continues to live and work and get smarter. And to that point, we didn't show you, but in the actual configuration screen, it'll ask you how it's been doing in so many ways, or is there any kind of performance, and then you can enter those comments, and it will write contextual prompts to try and improve its performance. So it is in many ways a self-learning or almost self-learning tool. Alrighty, Leslie. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from everybody else though, because I know some of you have been dabbling with these builders yourselves. So Does anybody else have anything to contribute about whether you think, is it getting better? Is your own builder getting better? Is it, are you
Let
still,
us know if you have any questions. You can unmute yourself. I'm half tempted to get myself a glass of wine now that it's 5:39 in the evening.
I'm gonna,
Leslie,
yes.
any surprises as you've been coming through this?
How, what do you mean
A-
surprise?
Sorry, got a cold, so my voice is even deeper than usual.
Very white.
Easier to use than you thought, more complicated to use than you thought. I like the things like the frustration around you can't upload the LinkedIn or you can't use the LinkedIn name, and there's nothing there that tells you, hey, stupid, this is not something you can do. And I find a lot of times when we're building things that it knows that, and but we don't know it, and it's not telling us anywhere. So there really aren't there's not an instruction booklet that you're following.
Yeah, that one hiccup of doing my best to try and get the LinkedIn in the title, and it kept rejecting me over and over again. And I was banging my head against a wall too, because I was trying to get my URL, what's the word, approved, to
Yeah.
validate it, and it wasn't validating. And I kept saying to Steve, like, what's happening? I even went to my, like, the internet service provider. I mean, like, why isn't this working, and so forth. So it never did work. And then I was able to align it with LinkedIn. But you're right, there was no error message coming up. It just like, no, you can't do that.
So was the first URL your website URL that wasn't working, but your LinkedIn did work?
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, there was no
Rhyme or reason.
this is why this isn't happening. I had to dig a little bit to
Yeah.
figure out why it wasn't working.
Well, and it's fair in many ways to remember that even though this is a massive company with billions of dollars invested in blah, 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 who they are, this is all new on their side
Playing
as
catch up.
well. Yeah, right. But that's frustrating for sure, Bob, like for sure.
And I did even go to like ChatGPT itself, and I went to their help, like whatever their help, because it was so early on that people were getting back to me, but I think they were sort of, their brains were scrambled and they couldn't figure it out either. They're just like, wait, and it'll, just wait and it'll turn itself around. I was like, I don't think so. Like the people in the help department didn't really care enough to help me walk through it either. They were just like, I don't know why you're getting an error message. I'm like, well, if you don't know, then how am I supposed to figure it out?
Well, and also we're so used to everything being instantaneous now. When I set up me and AI, I had some issues with the domain setup, and I had to remind myself of the days that, it takes up to 48 hours for domain information to propagate across the internet. Do you see what I mean? So, you know what I mean? Just configuring the Me and AI site had some glitches in that regard, and you don't know what's happening because if you don't do it on a regular basis, you might not know. Um, uh, Wonderful. Any other questions, comments? I thought someone had a chat.
I was just gonna say, there's two new things that I've discovered that I have found pretty powerful. Not so much for building a GPT, but I'm wondering if it could to test it in the process. One is you ask ChatGPT, you give it a prompt and it gives you an output. You then say, critique what you've just provided. And then depending on what it says in the critique, you can say, well, so then where would you improve it? But my new real favorite one is acting. This is the prompt. Acting as a prompt engineer,
Yes.
please optimize the prompt I'm about to give you. Do you have any questions? And then you give it the prompt. And anyway, the improvement, because even though many of us can write, we're still finding our way in the woods when it comes to prompt writing. And I played with it yesterday on ChatGPT, and it just blew me away in terms of the result. But I'm wondering about asking it to optimize the instructions for a GPT applied in the same way. So We'll
It
see.
kind of does that already in the configuration panel. Crudely, but it does try and do that. That's what I was saying before when if you it asks you how to review it and it says, but I that's a great tip for prompting, and I use it myself, especially when I'm trying to do things that elaborate. I mean, I'm not really a pro at this, but elaborate things in Midjourney where the prompts can be very long. And that's a paid service, so you kind of want to optimize it. But that's wonderful advice. Um, be a prompt engineer, and it's kind of humbling, isn't it, when it's sometimes it does such an instantly better job than you just typed for 5 minutes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, I know you mentioned you uploaded a chapter of your book. So have you built your own builder as well?
No, so just as an exercise, I uploaded a chapter of my book and then I said summarize it.
Hmm.
And then I can either turn that into a blog, or and then I said, if this were to be, basically, I'm paraphrasing, turn this in, lay this out in a X number of slide presentation. So it's not doing the visuals,
Right.
but it lays out bang, 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 what um, the structure of it, and then you can put it into your own PowerPoint template, pretty it up, emphasize some of the bullet points and play down others. I know that we're talking about ChatGPT, but I used Perplexity recently to go out and crawl. We're working with a client. I said, they're a B2B client, but I want to have Canadian-centric social media data for the social media platforms, 2023, ideally 2024 data, to support making the case for them to incorporate Meta into their social marketing. And Shazam, there's I don't know, 10 different sources. And I said, okay, lay this out in a 6-slide presentation.
Nice.
And that was, I don't know, 15 minutes. So, and it's all cited, like Hootsuite, social media today, so
Oh,
it's fancy. And then now we've been talking about GPTs. I'm kind of going, can I turn that one of the things I'm thinking about for GPT is we write blogs every month for clients, and then we use AI to derive social copy. So I want to systematize that. So I think that's the first GPT we're going to build.
well, and also it's kind of quality control too when you set the baseline, right? If you're happy with it.
I've always been reluctant to have AI write original content.
Hmm.
I love it from doing derivative content,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't trust it to write a book yet.
Well, haven't there been studies that are sort of saying that the algorithms are going to suppress content that is being built by AI?
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting, it'll be, it was only I don't know, a year ago, probably now, maybe a little longer, that OpenAI itself released a tool to analyze LLM output. And then within 5 days, they took it down because performance was terrible. So,
Rejecting so much, I mean?
no, it was missing. It was
Oh,
full of errors. It kept it would say something was synthetic when it wasn't, and vice versa. Like it was a terrible tool. And here in Toronto, there was a young man early on. This is over a year ago, that got a lot of attention in the PSI space for writing a software tool that would catch LLM outputs. Well, it just it's not going to happen. To your point though, um you know it is robotic if it's going to write something, because it's not writing with a human inspiration, and that's the core aspect of it, right? But can it summarize? Can it, I mean, the tools for summary, Liz, my co-founder, uses otter.ai, and she had like a 2.5 hour client meeting or something, like a tedious long client meeting with lots of discussions and deliverables. And she showed me the output of Otter AI, and it was mind-bogglingly good. Like, it didn't miss a word. It captured all the nuances of the conversation. It put a frame, anyway, it was very impressive in terms of the output. So I'm not surprised those tools are catching on, because they work really well.
One of the coolest things I've seen is related to Gemini from Google.
Yeah.
You can paste in a YouTube video link. So let's say this recording was to
Yes.
go on YouTube. You can ask it, and the example that I saw was, this is a panel discussion. List all the questions asked and the answers.
Yeah.
So basically, it just skips all the filler.
Yeah.
Goes to question, and just like, and to your point about the transcript, like, if I just want, basically, I don't have to watch an hour-long video. Like, give me the Cole's notes, or give me the most important parts, and you're like, holy cow.
Well, and also, I
Yeah.
mean, and I said this it seems obvious to me, but I think it's worth saying. If you're not, otherwise, you're the guy taking, if you're running the meeting, someone's taking notes, or you're trying to take notes, or you're trying to keep documenting the meeting. Whereas if you don't have that burden, you can actually participate more and contribute more, because you're not trying to do three things at once. I think that's the takeaway for sure. But go ahead.
Like, and so this has nothing to do with the ChatGPT builder, but to that point of the Otter AI, is that there are brands, enterprise level, that financial advisors, it's just eliminating the note taking, and it just summarizes what the conversations are. I think it's Morgan Stanley that's using that in the US. I don't know how it's working with compliance and all those kinds of things, but
Well, the takeaways, and what I was going to say earlier about the derivative content and blogging. So that one of my team members who writes blogs will use AI, and more specifically Perplexity, to research, because we have clients in disparate like industries.
Right.
We're never going to be subject matter experts in their particular industry, but she'll use it to do some research, predominant players related to content, but also what kind of what kind of issues are the industry facing? What questions are they asked? And basically, she gets almost a brief on what she should write about by applying AI without having to be an expert. And then she can put skin on the, or as I put skin on, meat on the bone.
Yeah, but that's great for your agency, because it's you know what I mean, you're learning more about your client's world, I mean, I mean, maybe it's because of the way I was trained at Accenture, but the first thing you do is competitive analysis at any point, like at all, because it's changing at 1,000 miles an hour too. That's a fascinating point. It really is. And I think that's what's exciting about AI and marketing, is it should be making our jobs better, but making the work at a higher level, and more customer service, and more actual impacts. One of the areas that I have some experience in is analytics and insights, marketing insights, and to see the power of the tools now to automate, test, and run relatively super complex automation content. It used to be a real project. It would be a team from Salesforce or another, or Pardot or something, and a slew of management consultants, and a lot of money to set up very complex marketing plans, automated marketing plans. I was obsessed by them 10, 15 years ago, but the level of complexity just to execute them was like, daunting. And now we're in an age where these tools can help.
Well, the prompt I was referring to earlier about, as a prompt engineer, optimize the following prompt I'm going to give you. So in ChatGPT, I use that step one.
Yeah.
Then I wrote the prompt, and the prompt pertained to, I'm going to provide you with an export of data from paid campaigns on Meta. I want you to conduct analysis on the export to say what campaigns worked best, least, and like highlight insights and with suggestions on like actions to be taken as a result of the analysis. It then optimized the prompt, and then I pasted that prompt in, and I gave it the export from Meta, and it ran the analysis. And like I said, less than 10 minutes. So.
And how was the analysis? Did you trust it? Was it of
Yeah,
value?
because where I was taking it from had visualization
Yeah.
so I could tell what campaigns were perform well, but it's like I'm not going to give someone a table of data, and this is an audit from we're doing an audit for another agency, and so we're complementing what they've already done. So there's some things I'm not going to bother telling them because they know,
Right.
but I'm looking for, like, is there just is this icing on the cake? Are there some insights that might have been overlooked, kind of thing? So, but the mere fact that I can take what would be a frustrating spreadsheet to go comb
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
and give a bullet list of here's what's working, here's what's not, here's potential areas for improvement, and then if, like I said, if I want to go turn that into a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Give me a summary of highlights. I had two massive spreadsheets that we used in a course I developed, and it was Environics data of pet food, and I was told the data was worth $30,000 at the time. And then I had some media data from Vivid Data. I can't remember. It was media buys against pet foods for like a year across Canada, and there were massive spreadsheets. To use the Environics data, we had to actually bring in an instructor and show them how to use the pivot tables and stuff too. It was a huge amount of data, fascinating. So in my testing and experiments over the last year, I trained GPT 3.5 when I could on these files, and I developed some self-adjusting curriculum, which was stunning to me. But when I uploaded these spreadsheets, it said, "Oh, did you know that there's connected data here?" And I was completely surprised because none of the humans involved in this project had ever seen any relation to the spreadsheets. And it was buried. It was just like a contextual kind of reference of one calculation to another. I would have never found it. None of the instructors found it. And of course, GPT 3.5 found it in about 15 minutes. It was humbling. It asked me, "Do you know there's a connection between these data sets?" I literally said no.
Deanna.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to share an experience that I had today with an artificial intelligent voice bot. I called Nissan to get my tires changed over, and I got this voice bot it recognized me right away by my phone number
Right.
and called me by name.
Come on.
Asked me to confirm that the vehicle that I wanted to change my tires for was the vehicle I was calling about, and asked me what I wanted to have done and any extra services I wanted to have done. It was fascinating.
Was now I'm curious, did it tell you it was a bot, or did it, or
No, it said it said I am Emily. I don't remember
okay.
yeah. It was really interesting though. It tried to make it as human as possible because as you were answering, it made this typing sound, right? It was crazy.
Oh, that's not fair. No, no, no. No, see, no, I would, that would annoy me.
Yeah. But it actually didn't get my vehicle right, which was interesting. So, like, I've always said this to Leslie when we were talking, like garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
still, but you still think of what it's saving them with a service and kind of efficiencies in many ways.
I guess I just think that if you're calling to talk to a human, not to.
Yes, I would
Yeah.
have the same reaction, and I would not be able to get past the clickety clack of synthetic teas. That would annoy me so much. We're running out
Yeah.
of time, folks. But thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Well, we have a couple minutes here. All right then. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for joining our first Learn with Me. We're going to have many more. Liz and I have had a really crazy kind of week and a half, but we're so excited to get started. And feel free to invite other marketers. You all can if you're members on the platform. I have to approve them, or Liz has to approve them to get in. And but we're going to open to the public soon when we get feeling like we're ready to go. And we have some housekeeping to get ready, but please spend time on the platform. Please drop by when you have a few moments. We're trying to keep the feed sticky, and there's some videos. All these videos would be available for playback too. Okay.
And if anybody has any feedback about my builder, I just put the link in again. Let me know. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. If you think that there's anything I can do to improve it, or just like, oh, I just had a brainwave. So if anybody wants to goof around and play with it, feel free.
Leslie is a host on our platform and is available. Feel free to chat with us. We have some great hosts. Lizette is a host. We've got some great people involved with the platform, and we're just getting started. So thanks again, Leslie. Thank you so much, my dear. And we'll see you all again very soon. Have a great weekend, everybody.